Hello, I'm Ken Field, chair of the biology department here at Bucknell University. And one of the things we've been discussing lately here at Bucknell is the need to balance surveillance testing, testing for COVID among vaccinated populations, and what our vaccine uh, uptake rate is, and also other mitigation strategies for COVID. And as we are debating these issues, I wanted to talk about this preprint that came out just a couple of weeks ago, and it addresses this question quite directly using two different types of modeling approaches. One of them is familiar to, if you've watched any of my previous videos. It's a SEIR epidemiological model. And using this approach, they've tried to determine what the benefit is of this kind of proactive or surveillance testing is when we have a partially vaccinated population. And so this preprint, I'm going to show you just one of the figures from it. You can also follow the link that I'll post below this video to run the simulations yourself and kind of play around with different parameters. This is the second figure from this preprint, and I want to emphasize that what we're currently dealing with the Delta variant is a variant that has R0 that is approximately equal to 6. And that means that without any mitigation strategies, each person who becomes infected infects on average 6 other people. And this has been pretty well established from some unfortunate outbreaks that occurred during the Delta wave here in the United States. The other important thing to consider is that we have currently, these graphs are showing the R effective on the heat map. So the R effective varying from approximately 6 if there's no intervention and no vaccination, up to below 1. And where the dotted line is located, we have a R effective of 1. And so if you're in the area to the right of this dotted line, an outbreak is less likely to become established within your community when there's an introduction of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, because each person on average will infect fewer than one other person, which means that the infection will not have a chance to become established. So we want to be on the right-hand side of this dotted line. And you can see here with an R0 of 6 and a vaccinated fraction of the population of around 95%, which is where we are here on campus, we are to the right of that, even if we don't do any surveillance testing. If we test, this compares no surveillance testing to biweekly to weekly. And this is, of course, based on some important assumptions about what you do with that information once you identify a positive and you successfully contact, trace them, and have them isolate, and that will limit the spread of the disease. So that's why as you go up in the frequency of testing, you see this dotted line curve to the left. You see that you're able to keep the population safe with a lower fraction of the population vaccinated. It's important to note that this R0 of 6 is assuming that there's no other mitigation strategies being employed. Here at Bucknell, we have indoor masking being enforced, at least in many of the academic settings. And therefore, we probably have a lower R0. We know that masking strategies, if they're fully deployed across the entire, all indoor settings, can get the R0 down to around 2 in the case of Delta. However, we know anecdotally that this is not being achieved, that not all indoor settings are um, effectively enforcing mask wearing. So I'm gonna assume that we're somewhere around an R naught of 4 here on campus. You can see again, if we consider just the campus community, we have a very high um, likelihood of preventing the spread of infection here on campus. But the very important thing is that this is not the entire community. Okay? That 95% would be true if faculty and staff were not allowed to interact with anyone outside of the Bucknell community. If they were required to isolate from their families and friends when they went home. And that's obviously not the case. Many faculty and staff have children who are not able to be vaccinated. They might have friends, or they might interact with other community members that are not vaccinated. And so if we, instead of looking at this 95%, we consider what the vaccination rate here is in Union County, which is about 55%, you can see that we are in this yellow zone here with no testing and with no surveillance testing anyway, and about 55% of the population vaccinated. We have an R effective of around 2, and that means that an outbreak is quite likely if there's an introduction. And we do know that Delta variant is here in our community, and that is why we're seeing growing numbers of cases here in Union County. So what percent vaccinated should we use in our modeling of what the population here is, the true community here is at Bucknell? And that's hard to really get a firm number on. I think it's probably safe to split the difference, to say that our community here is for every person who's on the faculty and staff, which has about an 85% vaccination rate at the current moment, there's likely to be family members or community members that they interact with regularly that have a 55% on average vaccination rate. And so if we kind of split the difference and assume that we're somewhere around 75%, you can see here the importance of regular testing. So we go from here where we have no regular testing, no surveillance testing, we have an R effective somewhere between 1 and 2. But as we increase the frequency of testing from biweekly, every other week, to every week, to twice a week, we can get across that threshold where we have our effectives of around 1 or even lower. And so this is why, until we achieve higher vaccination rates in our community, that is the entire Lewisburg and surrounding area community, we really can help prevent the spread of infections on campus and within our faculty, staff, and students by deploying regular surveillance testing. Now, of course, if we also could increase the effectiveness of our mitigation strategies, that is, have wider adoption of masking and social distancing, we could also shift from this middle graph to this left-hand graph. And at that point, we could probably, even at the current vaccination rate, we could probably avoid regular testing. But I don't think we're able to confidently say that we have, in our current situation, the levels of mitigation that we would need to have a R effective of 2 to start with. I hope this helps you understand why masking is so important when indoors. I hope it also helps you understand why there's still a role for surveillance testing here, proactive testing. I think that to go back to this preprint and kind of review their conclusions, they talk about how difficult it is to estimate precisely these parameters, such as the reproduction number in a particular workplace, in this case, in our university community, but that this model does really show how, as we're striving for greater and greater vaccination rates in our community, until we get to that level where we've truly reached herd immunity, we really do have an important role that we can each individually play in helping to mitigate the spread of infection. I'm happy to answer any questions if you want to post them in the comments below, or if you want to send me an email on kfield@bucknell.edu. Take care, everyone.